When you think of the modeling industry, the first thing you think of is skinny people. I'm sorry, I'm just gonna say it.
I see more and more models who are plus size. There's a huge market that's being open to that.
Still, when I look at a billboard, I see a skinny person.
Step forward if you agree with the prompt. Models are not good role models for teen girls.
I'm not going to say all models aren't good role models, but I think when teen girls especially are looking up to models who look a certain way, who are super skinny, it's going to make them maybe think, well, if I want to be like this person, I need to look like this person. I need to be what this person is. So it can be harming to them. It can be a disadvantage,
When you're a middle school girl or a high schooler and you see that your body is different from the models, like you don't know how they achieve that. And so I think it can contribute to like eating disorder culture, just a lot of insecurity within girls, not because things that the models are explicitly saying or doing, but just because when girls look at models, they kind of just see the ways that they would have to attain those body types. And so that's what kind of negatively affects them.
For me, I think it's less about the individual person. The collective group of just models in general are complicit in a system that harms women, especially young girls. One thing most women have in common is that they've seen a magazine once in their life. They've seen an Instagram. They have experienced some form of the modeling industry's content and then subconsciously begin to condition their brain to think, that is who I have to be, and that I am less than if I am not that thing.
I also think that it's not really models themselves who are like really the bad influence. I just think it's the industry and the people who are enforcing these standards and kind of like the male gaze and the sexualization of these women.
I agree. I think that the industry is really the biggest problem and the biggest threat to teenage girls just because they have a set standard for what they want to see.
But aren't models still complicit in that industry just by doing their job?
Yeah, I agree with that as well. But I also think that the biggest problem is the industry's idea of what a model needs to be and what it needs to look like. But it also comes from the models who are putting themselves in this position, which is definitely their choice, but it could also cause teenage girls to think of themselves differently.
Can the disagreeer step forward?
So I would say I do understand your opinion. However, I would also say there's not only the modeling industry that set the beauty standards. You have a lot of actors, athletes that represent these beauty standards in a way that are chosen to represent brands. I don't think we hold the entire responsibility of the beauty standards that are set, because in a way, I did not choose the beauty standard. I never started this job thinking, oh, I'm gonna consciously harm younger women, but I do understand what you ladies are saying, you know.
I feel like nowadays we have a social media platform which can be used for harm or for good. And I think a lot of models nowadays, there is kind of an insight to the industry about Photoshop, about retouching, about all this stuff. And I think a lot of models are being honest about it and letting the general public know that this is not real. This is like, these people Photoshop this, or this is how my skin actually looks. And I think if more models take that stand and actually embody our imperfections, I think in that way, models can be very good role models for teens. But I know that's not always what has been happening and what history has shown. But I think as models, we have the responsibility to do that as well nowadays.
I'm thinking about collective harm versus collective good, and the amount of models who are actually trying to remove the veil on what goes on and show that this isn't real. There are far fewer of the good ones than the ones like Kim Kardashian, who said, the only reason I look like this is because I eat well.
I think also just knowing that like people are editing their photos, it doesn't give the best message to girls, knowing that there is editing going on, because then you're thinking, oh wait, but then I should be editing my own photo. Like I should be photoshopping my own photo to look better, to look different, to look like these models, so.
I feel like we instantly go to answer the question, is the modeling industry good? That wasn't the question. So I feel like people compare themselves to models, but they don't understand that their primary role is to sell a product or to sell a service. So they're not saying, hey, everyone, this is how you should look. A lot of times it's like, hey, everyone, this is what lip gloss you should probably be wearing, you know? So when I see billboards or when I see ads, I'm like, why do they choose her? what's different about her? And I don't automatically resort to how she looks. I start looking into branding and marketing in hopes that it's not performative and it's not just to check off we have a black girl, we have a plus size, but that it's the latter and that they actually do care about people. So I feel like we should go into that a little bit more.
I think that you have that perspective as a model and as someone who's been involved in the industry. I just think that from an outside perspective and for young girls, they kind of immediately categorize these people as, oh, this is what I should look like, this is the standard.
So when you all see ads, do you instantly only think about how they look, or do you try to find out who the person is and like do research on the brand, how they align?
It's definitely comparison that comes to my mind when I think of seeing ads, billboards, even just magazines, etc. I tend to compare myself to these models a lot. It's embedded in my mind at this point because I've heard it even from a young age, even a minute on the lips, forever on the hips. I feel like that's like something I was taught at a young age, which is like so toxic. And even from TV shows, you know, there was always a standard that you have to look a certain way. I think when I feel I don't love my body, it normally comes from this feeling of, I guess, I want to be good enough. I want to have this privilege, this ideal, I guess, and this standard that's set in our society and especially in LA. And I just try to remind myself of what I am capable of and my intelligence and my kindness, etc.
Hi, this is Ragini, the director of this episode. If you enjoy watching Middle Ground, please like this video and subscribe to our channel. Now, let's get back to the video. Beauty pageants should be discontinued.
At their core, beauty pageants are women competing with other women. And the thing that they are using as competition is looks. So it goes back to at a certain age, when anyone looks at us, especially men, they don't see our hopes, our dreams, our goals, what we want to be. They see how we look.
I also agree that I think they should be discontinued because you see teen pageants, like you see all these 15, 16-year-old girls walking down the runway in their little bikinis and they're showing it to everybody, but it's like when you kind of think about it, who owns these companies? They used to be owned by Donald Trump. Like, you know, that's kind of makes it a little weird if you think about it and like, why are we actually doing this, you know?
I agree. I mean, I'm not very educated, I would say, on this topic as much as I would like to be, so I'm learning a lot more from you guys, but there are like pageants for 6-year-old girls who are going out. Yeah, the toddler, like toddler tiaras, whatever. And they're going out at like with full faces of makeup and they would get like spray tans and all this stuff at like 6 years old. And I was just like, they're growing up with this. I think it's very harmful for these young girls, especially because they think they need to fit into look this certain way for their entire lives.
So I would personally say that I don't see any harm in beauty pageants if it's done with adults over 18. I am totally against beauty pageant for younger women or younger teenagers and children. However, I do think that it can give some opportunities. I started my career as a model by winning a beauty pageant. It was like American, like French Tech Top model, basically. So if it wasn't for that, I would not have the career I have today. If it's done in the right way and at a certain age where you are a woman and not a child, then I think it's okay.
I also compete in pageants. I'll be competing for Miss California USA next month. And I feel like they're very misunderstood because it is not just about beauty. A lot of the women are just very well-rounded. There's so many different phases of the competition. There's interview. There's, you know, so many women who are big on philanthropy. And then I think that it is good for teens to do as well because they're being introduced to something that they may or may not be interested in. But there are also so many different procedures that are being put in place to where actually the teens are in activewear gear now. They're not wearing swimsuits on stage. So I don't feel like they should be discontinued. I think that they need to continue to go through this period of refinement.
Yeah, I would agree. I think a lot of girls look forward to participating in them, and not because of the toxic nature that people might assume surrounds it, but just because it showcases a lot of things. They're a lot of the times asked questions about the world and have to have public speaking skills, and a lot of time there's talents. And so I do think it reinforces the idea that women are valued on their appearance and that's who's gonna win. But I just think there's a lot of other components of it that take away from how superficial it might seem that make me kind of disagree that it should be discontinued.
I was just gonna say that I definitely agree with you guys' sides as well. My disagreement with it is like the teen aspect. And I didn't know that they do activewear now because I did have family members that used to be in pageants and stuff like that where I'm just like,
It's changed like in the
this
last
kind of makes me feel a
2
little.
or 3 years.
Okay.
They changed it.
So then, yeah, I might change my view then as well. But I think the over sexualization of like teen girls is, for me, like I just don't think that's right. But
What specifically about the teen? Because I feel like having a teen that knows about certain viewpoints, whether it's what do you think about social media or can you talk about bullying, I think that teens deserve to have that representative as well. And then also it's like, okay, there's makeup, but teens also go to prom. So I think that without beauty pageants, you all just said you look at billboards and you compare yourself. I don't think that it will stop the comparison. But I also feel like it's not compared to sports, but it's very similar. No one is saying that we should get rid of sports because men or women are comparing themselves in talent.
I definitely understand the thing about leadership and just like having your own voice, but there are other ways that you can have that voice that don't put such a high emphasis on beauty. It should be more about who we are, and I think while beauty pageants aren't all about beauty, they're still named beauty pageants. At the end of the day, it's still about beauty.
Modeling is feminist.
I mean, I think it's a form of expression and femininity, and if you find comfort in it, and if you're expressing yourself, I think feminist can mean a lot of different things. I don't think there's one way to be a feminist, so it can be different for anyone, and if you're a model and you also define yourself as a feminist, it's possible that it can be both.
I agree. I think it's a great way for people to express themselves, and it can give women a platform in some ways. And so I think that in itself is feminist, as like feminism kind of to me gives like sort of equal representation. And so as modeling can be like a gateway for people to build their platforms and their positions, I think that's what makes it feminist.
I'm kind of like 50-50 between if it's feminist or not feminist. The male vision has been very implemented onto women, and sometimes I feel like it is overly sexualized. It's very sex sells, that type of vibe. That's the only reason I feel like it's not feminist per se.
I agree. I feel like the industry actually affects women more negatively than men. So I wouldn't say that it's solely a feminist, power to the woman. I feel like we actually take a hit and we have a lot of negative things. I think that we are doing better and that we're improving, but I wouldn't say that this, industry has always just uplifted women.
When you think of the modeling industry, the first thing you think of is skinny people. I'm sorry, I'm just gonna say it. And there's not a lot of representation for people who are medium-sized, people who are plus-sized, and when we look at the modeling industry, we then feel less than. So it does more harm than good because it only shows like a little bit of the population.
I do agree with what you were saying. It's true. It's a very, in a way, elitist industry that only incorporates a certain body type and height and measurements. But also, I would have to say that I see more and more models who are plus size. There's a huge market that's being open to that. There's never been more inclusivity, personally, I think, and now it's really becoming more open.
Yeah, I definitely agree with the fact that it's getting more open, but still, when I look at a billboard, I see a skinny person. All that content still breeds a lot of insecurities for girls who aren't that body type because the default is still skinny. How I feel when I see skinny models is definitely a sense of not jealousy, but like because I have a little more meat on my bones, will I be perceived as less than? Will I have less opportunities? And also, am I not healthy just because I am bigger than what a conventional model looks like?
It does create a certain level of insecurity because not all women, or even men for the fact, not all of them are represented. But I will say that stepping into the entertainment industry didn't make me insecure. I think it just highlighted things that I was already insecure about. I'm like, okay, these people are really skinny. There's not a lot of black women. I think it kind of just highlights things that we already think about ourselves.
I think it also depends on what type of modeling you do. I think there's some agencies that are gonna still to this day tell you that you're too big or your hips are too wide or you need to lose weight here and here, but it has not been my experience. I've been very body positive. I've never had somebody tell me I need to lose weight or you need to do this and this, which has been very comfortable for me. The campaigns that I see nowadays, the people that I work with, has been a broad spectrum than what I feel like it has been in the maybe 10 years ago or so even.
I couldn't agree more. Personally, I think that more than the modeling industry, something that really exacerbate these maybe insecurities is social media. Yeah. It's like going on your phone. Like any young child can go on there and then compare themselves to not necessarily models, but other women who put filters, and that is really something that is a bit more dangerous nowadays, I would say.
I have suffered from eating disorders.
Starting at a pretty young age, I was worried about my weight. COVID kind of cut off my 6th grade school year, so I just turned 12 years old when COVID started, and I started doing these Chloe Ting workouts, and then that kind of turned into this over-obsession with working out every day, or I was gonna get fatter, and it also turned into me not really eating the proper amount I should have been, and I lost a substantial amount of weight. I lost my period for about 3 months during this time as well. And now I look back at these times and it was the worst I've ever been feeling, but it was the most anyone's ever complimented me or said, oh, you look so good, or you look so skinny, like you look so much better than you did before. I think that's a very negative aspect of when we see someone, we comment on their bodies, even if it's, oh, you look so good, oh, your body looks so good. Maybe they could be struggling and then they're gonna think, oh, I need to stay this way. I need to stay and look this certain way. And for me, that's what happened. And then I realized I'm super unhealthy and I could get even more unhealthy if I stay this way. So I actually worked on body self-acceptance, and though I'm definitely not there yet, that's what's helped me so much is from support from my parents and from my friends who know I've gone through this.
I would like to join what you were saying. I never suffered from eating disorder, but I remember being in Paris, and when I was in my skinniest, my agents and everybody around me in the industry was like, you look amazing, and I was like, wow, this is so wrong. It's interesting how people think because you're so skinny, you're like your happiest, and you know, there's something really wrong about that, and I totally understand that.
And I also think as consumers, we only get so much of a glimpse into the modeling industry. Like if I'm scrolling on TikTok, a lot of the times I see like what I eat in a day videos as a model. The next day you go about your day, you're immediately comparing to how much you're eating versus these models. And so, yeah, I think disordered eating is just kind of something that's extremely prevalent with all women, especially growing up.
That's so true. I think that when you see the TikToks of like what I eat in a day, you know, I want to challenge everyone to start looking at ads differently, because a lot of times it's probably not actually promoting what they're eating in a day. It's probably trying to sell the service. I think culture plays a large role in it as well, because in the modeling industry, of course, be skinny, be this size. But for me, when I go home, my grandmother's like, you need to eat. Like, do you want me to cook for you? So I'm like, okay, I'm going home, and now I'm like too skinny.
You have no idea how many people tell models often like, oh, you probably don't eat anything. And I'm like, oh, here we go again. It's like so frustrating. And I'm like, no, I actually do eat really well. Now I just joke and I say, no, I haven't eaten since birth, like, you know. And they're like, oh, they're so shocked, because I'm like, the comment is so like rude. You would never tell a person that's a bit overweight, oh, you probably eat so much French fries, but it's easy to tell a person, oh, you don't eat anything, just because that person is leaner. And some of us are like just naturally really skinny, and we can eat all we want, and just we don't get put on weight.
I love my body.
It's hard for me to completely agree with the notion that I love my body, just because it's hard to say that you love something that you battle with every day and that you're constantly looking at and overly criticizing to yourself. But your body is a part of you, and it doesn't matter how you look. Like at the end of the day, it comes down to what our bodies provide for us and the opportunities that it gives us. And so I think that the reason I say I love my body isn't at all because of how it looks, but just because of what it gives me and how grateful I am to be able-bodied and to live life the way I do.
So for me, for instance, it wasn't always the case, not that I hated it before, it was just I did have some insecurities as a teenager. And becoming a model then also exacerbated certain of these insecurities, of course. But I think there's a beautiful thing about aging is, personally for me, I fully accept myself the way I am. I'm a mother now, I have a 2-year-old daughter, and seeing the miracle of the body that can create a human, I will never again think, oh, the stretch mark or the this. And I think acceptance is the most important part about beauty. That's also part of personally for me, aging. I have a 2-year-old daughter, and I would not necessarily encourage my daughter to become a model because I think it's such a difficult industry that I would not want my kid to do it long term, not as a career, I would say, but just as a hobby. It's an industry that's really based on rejection. It can be harmful to young women. So if that's a route she decides to go for when she's older, I would help her along the way. However, this is definitely not something I will encourage her to do. Knowing all the difficult sides of the industry, there's so many great things, but there's also things that I would not necessarily want someone I love to go through.
For me, it's definitely a battle. It's a day-to-day thing. Some days I really love how I look, some days I don't. I mean, part of it is definitely my queerness and being on the masculine side. A lot of people don't view me as a girl, and I get misgendered a lot, and I am definitely on the non-binary spectrum as well, but I also feel very feminine a lot of the time, and I am still a woman. So it's about finding who I am, finding my space in womanhood. And like the other day, I looked in the mirror and I flexed my muscles, and I've been working out a lot, and I was like, dang! It's something that all of us have to do to be able to live a long, healthy life, is look at ourselves and be like, wow, this is who I am, and I'm not just okay with that, not just accepting it, but I'm happy with it.
I think it's like a sibling, you know, just because they do something one day that you may not like, or that you're like, wow, I don't like you today, but I still love you, and you're still my brother, or you're still my sister. And so I think that choosing to say, I love my body, doesn't mean that we don't have days where we're like, I would change this, or I might need to get up and go to the gym today. It's like a roller coaster, you know, and it's a roller coaster of emotions, but overall, I think that it is safe to say that you love your body.
It's kind of hard for me sometimes to say I love my body. There's just such a comparison even between models and who gets the job and who doesn't get the job, that you put a microscope on yourself and you're like, well, maybe if I was getting skinnier, or if I had a little more weight, or if I didn't have this little thing, and you're comparing to all these girls that are going into castings with you, which I think definitely has had a little bit of a harmful effect on me myself. I would hope that one day I can give myself enough self-love to have those things go away, but it's definitely still something I struggle with to this day.
Yeah. I would love to say that I love my body, but a lot of times when I'm looking in the mirror, I'm not loving what I'm seeing. And it's so hard to like really appreciate what I have and what I was given. But I have 2 moms. I go to an all-girls school. I'm surrounded by girls constantly. So I'm always comparing myself. And I think that's where a lot of my self-love issues come from. And though I do appreciate my body for all it does for me, it's so hard for me to say that I love it, because that would be a lie.
Pretty privilege exists.
I think there's no denying that whenever we look our best, people perceive us a different way. Like if I get out of the house looking all dolled up and I go to an event, you'll get more attention, opportunities than if I go to the same event just with no makeup, just looking like I just got out of bed, obviously.
It is a thing, it does exist, but I also hate how a lot of times we're boxed in or we're confined because of that. I feel like there's also a downside where you actually be a little underestimated just because you are considered to be pretty.
Yeah, I've also seen a lot of people who've lost a ton of weight, and they say that one of the biggest things was they were so surprised at how differently they were treated, especially when it's a lot of weight. And also, there was a study that said that when men don't find a woman attractive, like they tune her out, you know? Like a lot of times you won't be listened to, but also on the other side of it, sometimes when they just see you as this valuable object, they don't really value your opinion. So I think it kind of goes both ways.
Some opportunities, you have to prove yourself over and over more to prove that you're not just like this pretty person, but you know, to some people like, no, I can get that job and I'm also smart. I can do both.
Yeah, I mean, I can wear a tank top and also be super smart. Like, I love science and math, and if I want to feel confident, and if I want to wear something that's going to make me feel confident, I don't want to be put into a box of, oh, you're only like pretty, or you're only like sexy or hot, and like, I don't want to be this object to people. So it's definitely this balance of what do I want today, because it's rarely feeling like people are perceiving you as both.
I do agree as a concept, pretty privilege is definitely real. I don't like the term. I feel like pretty privilege isn't actually a privilege. You have to be perfect or a huge section of society won't like you. We are expected to be pretty enough, but not too pretty to seem dumb. We're expected to be smart, but not smart enough to make the guys feel threatened. So it's more dividing us as women and scapegoating women who can't actually help how they look.
Thank you guys so much.
It was just so nice to have a conversation where just of all women, that was such a healing thing to do. Thank you.